Welcome to part 19 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the cover-up and corruption that ensued. A-list celebrities and politicians and their offspring are involved. So this part, we're still dealing with the secret court hearings that were made for Alberto Driz because of the probation violation of being caught with the illegal white powder and the stolen loaded chambered pew-pew and the duffel bag of green plants that was found in all three Driz's homes. They were all in possession of it. So we're on the second hearing for this, back in Judge Schwartz's courtroom at the airport courthouse. Again, the one with the new case number, new judge, new jurisdiction, everything. So, Blair Burke, who was also at the time simultaneously representing Harvey Weinstein against the 100 or so women for SA, she's in court with Alberto. They're both present. And the judge, this one was crazy. We attended this, and it was wild. You could actually tell that Judge Schwartz was nervous. Like, he was nervous, and they all kept looking in the back of the courtroom at us, like whispering, like all the attorneys, the judge, everybody was whispering. It was pretty insane. So Judge Schwartz says, he opens with, okay, so the disposition is a lot more complicated than when we originally took the plea. There's a lot more stuff behind the scenes here. You don't say. And this is one of the most interesting things, one of the most, not the most interesting thing that he says. He says, like, nervous. It was so weird, his vibe. I am not into political stuff in this court. So I don't get into anything. I just do my job. And I don't have a thing for anybody. I just do my job. And I'm not interested in any of the back information. So I'll leave that by itself. We were like, what does that even mean? It almost sounds like he's saying, I'm just being told what I've been told to do. I don't want to know what I'm doing. Like, and this, by the way, this is the second judge now in like a week that said, I don't want to know any back information. I don't really care. Just like Judge Mader said, I have no interest in resolving this matter. I don't really care. So all the judges are saying, look, my hands are clean. My hands are clean. I don't care. And I don't know what's going on. So that's, can't stand them. Anyways, then the judge says, I personally spoke to Judge Mader, and she agreed to send the case. And then he says that his clerk just verified, like that morning, that the case hadn't been sent yet. So now, this is just so weird because this isn't how democracy works. So then he says, so I'm going to attempt to get the case again. I will call later today and talk to the Judge Mader or the clerk and say, look, please, we need this file because we've got to wrap this up. It's interesting, almost like there's a lot of pressure on Judge Schwartz to take this case away and then wrap it up as soon as possible and free them and make sure they don't get to prison. This is crazy. So then Blair Burke, famous Weinstein attorney, says, okay, great. And if we could get the file in the next couple weeks, and then the judge responds, I will call you, and then we'll call you to come in. I don't know if this is normal. Do judges usually get on the phone, on cell phone, and like talk privately with all the attorneys and stuff? Because I don't think I've ever had that happen. So then, Blair Burke, she asks, after all this, after Alberto admitted to having the pew-pew in his possession, and there was the white powder that he was caught with, and there was the duffel bag of the green plants, Blair Burke asks that Alberto be allowed to travel to Mexico. But again, they're on felony probation for a violent crime, and they've also been kicked out of private jail for showing up drunk and trying to fight the staff there. So, not that that matters in this case. She asks that Alberto be allowed to travel to Mexico twice a month for business reasons associated with the company he owns called United Medical Devices. Look it up. See what you find. Then the judge says, and he says, he's like, great, that sounds amazing. And then he says to the people, like, any objections? And the DDA, the newly assigned one that replaced the amazing guy, that's David Shore, DDA David Shore. He says, I can't think of an objection. So the judge says, cool, it's all good. Change the probation. They can do that. And then he says, we're going to delay sentencing for like 5 weeks until November 17th of 2017. And then he says again, the judge, I'll call the court downtown to make sure they give me the case again. This is intense. He is fighting to take this case away from Judge Mader. He is fighting to help Blair Burke keep these men free. This is going to be my shortest part yet. I'm going to end it here because we're going to start with the next hearing. And we're going to get into the Schwarzenegger stuff. Thanks for everybody for being so patient also for the last week. My PTSD was just, and I couldn't do much of anything. So it was the longest break I've taken in any of my parts. And I'm going to try to do them every other day or more if I can. But thank you so much for everything. Welcome to part 20 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story of surviving an attempted unaliving and the corruption and cover-up that ensued. A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are also in this story. So right now we are in the 4th of 7 hearings over the course of 5 months that are just to deal with the surprise police raid at the 3 felons' home where they found the illegal white powder, the duffel bag of illegal green plants, and the stolen loaded chambered pew-pew that was accessible to all 3 drizzes. So we're not in the airport court in the secret hearings anymore. We're back again into Judge Mader's courtroom downtown. And also, we have a new DDA, Deputy District Attorney, for this case because, if you'll remember in the last hearing in Judge Mader's courtroom, the amazing DDA, Casey Higgins, was removed immediately after he stuck up for us. And he said, I think from memory, he said something like, when is enough and we keep these guys in custody? Like, how many times do they have to violate probation? And we keep telling them, go get him. So he was removed and he was surreptitiously, did I say that right, replaced by a new DDA, and her name is Miriam Avalos. So we're in Judge Mader's courtroom. Case number is BA 436130. And Maurice Driz is what we're dealing with here because we're doing Alberto's in the other one. So Maurice's attorney is Mark Worksman. Okay, so we start off and Judge Mader opens with, my understanding was that at the airport court, Alberto both entered a plea of guilty on the pew-pew allegation, the new case, as well as admitting to being in violation of probation on my case. However, the minute orders, they only reflect a guilty plea. Now, remember, the minute orders are like the truncated bullet point version summaries of the entire transcripts so that, certain people don't have to read 1,100 pages of words like I've done. So the minute orders are just, to make it easier to read. So this is where it's really interesting, because when you're removing judges, removing DAs, and you're altering illegally transcripts, and then you bring in the new judge and the new DA and the new minute orders, that's where it's easy, where things can slip through the cracks, because they can say, my hands are clean, I just read the minute orders. Anne doesn't have a star witness to her attempted unaliving, because it doesn't say it here, because the transcripts were edited. Same thing here. So Judge Mader's actually noticing and saying on the record that what you told me is not what's being said in the minute orders, the legal part of this. So, again, a little bit of a breakdown judicially, as she mentioned in one of my previous parts. So then Maurice Driz's attorney, Mark Worksman, he says, well, in the airport court, Alberto admitted to the probation violation. Mr. Alberto Driz did admit the probation violation, and there was a global settlement. There was a deal made between the DA's office through head deputy Stephen Katz of the airport court, he's out, not in our jurisdiction, and the defense of Alberto Driz accepted by Judge Schwartz, again, not in our jurisdiction, that in exchange for a plea of no contest to the new felony complaint and admission of the probation violation, which is not written in the minute orders, that Judge Schwartz, in possession of both cases, would sentence Alberto to time served, basically 20 days that he served in custody until we could get the emergency secret hearing, and that he would resume his terms and conditions of probation. So I think we can all agree that even if you're not on felony probation for a violent crime, that a regular person like me or you or your friends, if we were caught with illegal white powder, and at the time the green plants were illegal, and we had those, like no prescription, and specifically a loaded, stolen, chambered pew-pew, a 25 Beretta, if we were found with that, we'd be in trouble. Do you think you and I would get more than 20 days in county and then immediately released? Well, that's what happened. A deal was made privately in the airport court with Judge Schwartz, and they were like, 20 days is enough, because I think he has sleep apnea, and that's very serious. Okay, so then he said, Mark Worksman, Maurice's attorney, then says, not only did Judge Schwartz resolve the outstanding allegation of a probation violation, but that Judge Schwartz modified the conditions of probation for Alberto Driz such that he permitted him to additional travel and some other terms and conditions. He rewarded him on felony probation for after they found the narcotics and the illegal chambered pew-pew. He rewarded him by making his travel, the travel requirements flexible so that he could do as he wanted, and they gave him the deal. So this is very exciting for the Drizzes, I wonder why they haven't done this more times. So then Judge Mader responds, okay, well, the minute orders are still incomplete then. She then repeats, it doesn't reflect anything about a probation violation having been admitted to, because that's actually a pretty big deal. Proud of you, Judge Mader, for, doing your job. Then she says she's still confused, though, because Alberto was released from custody, despite him being on a no bail status due to the violation. So laws are just being broken left and right here over in the airport court. He was literally on a no bail status due to the violation, and they said, no, we got to release him. Okay, ready for this? Buckle up. Okay. So Maurice's attorney explains why Alberto was released in the airport court. And this is what he says. He says, in fact, Your Honor, something even more complicated occurred, which is that Alberto Driz's arraignment on the new charges, I believe he was released because of the pending Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur. So, again, I would love to hear your personal stories and examples. If any of your friends or family or you yourself were ever caught with a loaded stolen pew-pew and white powder that's illegal, and then the judge saying, okay, I have no questions about any of that. I have no follow-up questions. I don't want to know the backstory. But one thing is for sure. I'm going to expedite your release. I'm going to make sure your traveling is a lot easier to do. And it's a Jewish holiday, so you shouldn't be in jail. We don't jail people, I guess, for if you have religious holidays. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I could be wrong. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know. How much time do I have? Okay. So Judge Mader is like, cool, pretty much. Just like, okay, that tracks. No follow-up questions. So then Judge Mader then goes, she kind of switches over the topic and she goes, okay, well, the other thing is I want to understand facts about the pew-pew. I'm actually happy about this because Judge Schwartz in the other hearing was like, I have no questions about the pew-pew or the narcotics or anything. No questions. In fact, I'm just going to quote Arnold Schwarzenegger and I'm going to give you advice to clean up the rest of the bullets from your place, and then I'm going to expedite your release. At least she's saying, wait, we still have to clear up the whole incident. There was clearly this, pew-pew. And so what she's referring to, she's like, because Alberto and Maurice, during the surprise raid, they told the cops, it's a family heirloom. They both agreed. They both said it. It's a family heirloom to all of the Beverly Hills Police Department. Despite it having a serial number in the police department tracking down the owner, and it was 100% proven it's a stolen pew-pew from Lawndale, California, which is like an hour or two south of LA. So the Judge Mader says, she goes, I think those are facts that should have been taken into consideration by Judge Schwartz, and I'd like to know about the narcotics found within the residence. Amazing. So I love when people do their job. It's so exciting. So then she says, okay, what I'm going to do is she's like, I'm going to order the verbatim transcripts of those hearings that were done in Judge Schwartz's courtroom so I can understand what happened, because it doesn't make sense. And then she says, by the way, DDA Higgins, the amazing one who was removed for speaking up for us, she says that he actually, before he left, like his last little act of kindness was that he filed a motion to continue. So he made sure the owner of the pew-pew was contacted, subpoenaed to come to court and everything, before he was replaced by a woman named, she's DDA Miriam Avalos. And the judge says, yeah, and my clerk also indicated to me that Miriam Avalos is saying this case is a lot more complicated than she anticipated. She hasn't been given information, and DDA Avalos agrees. I'm going to end this here. I have to finish the rest of this hearing because it still goes off the tracks. But I'm running out of time. So thank you so much, everybody, for following along and asking great questions. I love reading your questions and answering them. They're really smart, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the support too. Thank you so much. Welcome to part 21 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the cover-up and corruption that ensued. A-list celebrities and politicians and their offspring are also in this story. So we are still on the third of 7 hearings to deal with the surprise probation search where the stolen loaded pew-pew, the illegal white powder, and the duffel bag of green plants was found in all 3 Drizz's possession. So we are still in Judge Mader's courtroom downtown. And so I'll kind of like start off from the end of my last part where the judge introduces the new DDA, Miriam Avalos. Now I know it's a little confusing, but there's 2 replacement DDAs to replace the amazing, experienced DDA that had been handling our case for 2 years, Casey Higgins. So there's the new DDA that's in the airport court, which is David Shore, in the illegal secret hearings. And then there's this new DDA in the downtown court, and this is Miriam Avalos, and this is her first time speaking in court about this case. So the Judge Mader, says to her, she says, okay, so my clerk indicated to me that this is a bit more complicated than you anticipated. Almost as if somebody wanted to put this DDA in there who knew absolutely nothing, you know. And DDA Avalos totally agrees with her, and she says, yeah, I think there are certainly underlying facts in this case that I feel I'm not fully aware. Even just this discussion about what happened in the airport court. I don't have familiarity with these facts that Mr. Higgins does, and I do believe that Mr. Higgins should be here for this discussion. I agree we should get a transcript as to what happened in the airport court. So Avalos is on it already. She's like, I don't know what's going on. This is pretty serious. Like, why would I not, like, why am I here, pretty much? So Judge Mader says, okay, but we have the actual registered owner of the pew-pew here in court. Like, she took the bus or drove up or whatever, like 2 hours from where she lived to testify in a case that she has nothing to do with, except for this thing that was stolen from her is now part of our case. So the DDA is like, okay, well, I've never met this woman. I don't know the owner. So can we take a 20-30 minute break so I can question her before I put her on the stand so I know what I'm going to ask? And so they take a break, they allow it, and then they come back to the court, and Maurice Drizz's attorney, Mark Worksman, says, okay, you know what? I misspoke earlier when I said that Alberto's case has been resolved in the airport court. He says it actually hasn't. It's not over, and final sentencing will be in about a week at the airport court. So he corrected himself. And then Judge Mader reminds him, she's like, okay, well, cool, I still need to see the transcript from that because him admitting to the probation violation is not in the minute orders, and that's a huge deal. So DDA Avalos, she asks Judge Mader to keep the investigating officer from the drug raid to stay and also be ready to testify, and she says yes. So this nice woman, we met her after court and said hello and thank you for, doing your civic duty, whatever. She gets on the stand, and the DDA starts asking her questions like, do you know who the Drizzes are? And she's like, no idea. She asks questions about the pew-pew, and the woman says, under oath, she says that she bought it brand new in 1994 at a surplus store in Hawthorne, which is like Southern California somewhere. She bought it new. So this family heirloom that's been like handed down generations in the Drizz family, turns out that's not true. The pew-pew was then stolen from her in 1996-ish, a year or two after she bought it. And she said that she immediately went to the police department and reported it stolen. So she's good. She's fine. The last time this woman had heard about the pew-pew was 2 months before this hearing, so September 2017, when the raid happened and they found it. And the Beverly Hills Police Department called her because serial numbers, she's a registered owner. This is basic stuff. And then the witness says, they found a pew-pew registered to me. At that point, Maurice Drizz's attorney, Mark Worksman, stands up and he's like, objection, hearsay. And immediately the judge is like, overruled. What? Like, sit down. What? So this is stupid. Then he cross-examines her, Worksman. He cross-examines the witness multiple times. And he implies that she can't be sure that this pew-pew is actually hers. And the witness is like, sir, like, I've seen pictures of it provided by the police department. It's the same one I have. And also, the serial number matches up. Like, clearly, it's my stolen pew-pew. So he was just reaching. He was really reaching, trying to mess her up, and he didn't. She was great. And so this is the end of the hearing, and Mark Worksman, well, let me say this. The Drizzes have all been kicked out of jail for drinking and being aggressive with the officers at the jail. They have been caught with a duffel bag of green plants. They've been caught with the white powder inside their house, all during felony probation. So obviously, Maurice's attorney asks if they can lift the requirement that Maurice attends AA meetings. And obviously Judge Mater says, yes, obviously, that's a great idea. Cheers. So that's the end of that hearing. And I'm going to post a picture right after I post this. I'm going to post a picture that popped up online about a week and a half later. So this is like a week and a half or so right before Thanksgiving 2017. And I've already posted it maybe weeks ago, but I'm going to post it again because it's chronological. And this photo I'm going to post is of the Schwarzenegger family doing volunteer work at a church with Sean Driz on Thanksgiving. And out of all the pictures that were wiped from the internet of him, this one was the one that popped up suddenly during all of this, a week and a half after all of this. Well, Sean wasn't arrested and he was free, despite the judges and the police saying he was in possession of everything that was found during this raid. Yet somehow he was the most protected out of all the Drizzes. Even though they were clearly protected in court with all these secret hearings and stuff, Sean didn't even have to set his alarm to come to court. So, all right. It was a short one today. Yay. Thanks, guys, so much. I'm going to try to post another one in the next couple days. Thank you so much. And any questions, keep them coming. Thanks. Welcome to part 22 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the corruption and cover-up that ensued. A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are also in this story. Okay, so we are now on, I think, hearing number 5 out of 7. For some reason, there's 7 hearings to deal with this one arrest with tons of evidence, with a stolen, loaded, chambered pew-pew, the illegal white powder, and the duffel bag of green plants that was found in all 3 Drizz's home by a slew of police officers. Yet we're still pushing off, the judges keep pushing off sentencing because they're allowing the attorneys to do things in the background. And it takes more than, a couple weeks to do these type of things. And it takes months. So that's why they're doing this. I'm just going to say that. So it's now November 17th, 2017, and we are back in Judge Schwartz's courtroom in the airport courts in a whole different jurisdiction, not legal. Okay, so the people that are present for this court date, and we were there too. This is one of the secret court dates that we found out about, and we showed up, drove all the way down, and sat quietly in the back. And we were unaware of what was happening even while we were there. It took me about maybe a couple of years to connect the dots of what was happening, just so you know. So in this courtroom, we have Judge Schwartz. We have the new DDA, David Shore, who never made a point to reach out to the victims and never responded to any of my emails to this day. Representing us. Isn't that cozy? Then we also, so this is the hearing to keep addressing Alberto Drizz's involvement, because it was in his nightstand, the pew-pew, and the rolled up dollar bills with the illegal white powder, all in his room. Well, on felony probation for a violent crime, but whatever. And his attorney is Blair Burke, who at the time was simultaneously representing Harvey Weinstein. So these are big hitters, expensive people, and unethical. And then also somebody that was present for this, but not arrested or sitting there with an attorney. He was just sitting in the seats with the regular audience, and it was Sean Driz. He was there. It was very interesting. So we'll get to what happens at the end of this hearing where, in my opinion, it was another, and everybody who witnessed it, it was another probation violation done by Sean Driz. We'll get to that. Okay. So the court date starts off in Judge Schwartz, and everybody's nervous because we're not supposed to be here. We were supposed to be not supposed to be there. It was supposed to be secret hearings. So everybody is just tripping over themselves, trying to cover their tracks and stuff, whatever. So it starts off with Judge Schwartz saying, I just need to make a procedural history on this because this is not going to go its normal way. This was a situation where the head deputy, Mr. Katz, Mr. Stephen Katz, by the way, and he's the head deputy at the airport court, not in our jurisdiction. These are just people just being like, hey, we're just going to do all of this stuff in a completely different, might as well do it in a different state. So he says, this is a situation where the head deputy, Mr. Katz, authorized a disposition on this case. The agreement with the DA's office, without getting into, what was said to them, because I don't know, we weren't there, I wasn't there, and neither was the DA here. Anyway, Mr. Katz agreed to time served and 3 years formal probation. What he's saying there, he's like, this guy in a different jurisdiction from where the case is, downtown, This guy who has nothing to do with the case in a completely different jurisdiction made a disposition and decided time served at like that 20 days in jail and that they had to keep him in there, Alberto, until they could rush a hearing, which they did. This guy decided that. And they did it without the DA's office as well. This is so illegal. So, Judge Schwartz goes on, I had a printout of that case done, and it just showed community service. So, based on that sentence alone, we all believed that it wasn't anything major. So we took the plea with the understanding is I'll put over sentencing. Then this judge says, and you remember that Harvey Weinstein's attorney is the only attorney sitting in the room representing Alberto, and this is the way the judge is talking to her. He says, so I called Judge Mater downtown personally. She said, okay, she'll send the case, but we didn't get it. So I authorized Alberto to travel for business purposes out of state to Mexico. I'm gonna stop there. So the judge is saying to the attorney, look, I'm trying to force the case into over here so that I can, release Alberto. Like, I'm trying to. I'm sorry. I called her personally. I went out of my way. And then I just decided, yeah, let's let him travel, this felon, to Mexico for whatever business purposes without proving anything. Okay? So then the judge says, and then Judge Mater said she wasn't sending the file and she was going to go ahead with the probation violation in her courtroom. Basically, I'm in a position where I can't force her to send the file to me. So all I can do is put off sentencing until after the probation violation. So I'm going to stop there with him. So he's kind of almost apologizing to Blair Burke, saying, look, I am trying to force it. I can't do that. I've tried. So I'm going to keep delaying sentencing Alberto because I'm going to allow you time to finagle things in the background. So then he says to Blair Burke, he says, she's going forward with the probation violation, and I'd be happy to put over sentencing until afterwards. That's option number 1. I can sentence him today is option number 2. I can suggest you go there, downtown, and try to force her to send the case here. Now, if you want to talk to her, Judge Mater, go to her court. Maybe explain the rules to her. Or talk to Judge Gordon. Who is Judge Gordon? He's the head of criminal in airport. Our judge that is the head of criminal in the airport court. Then he says, I am not the supervising judge or the presiding judge where I might have more influence. He literally admits it. He is not the judge on this case. He shouldn't have any influence. He says it. So now they're talking about how can they force this into his court. Okay? So then Ms. Burke says, okay, if I may ask that we continue the sentencing on the new case, the pew-pew white powder case, probation violation. She says, if I can ask that we continue the sentencing so that I may take steps in the court of original jurisdiction to inquire. Of course, Judge Schwartz says, sure. Then the court says, okay, well, the other defendant, Maurice Driz, is he still in custody? And she says, no, he's out of custody for no reason. And so the judge responds, okay, so I'll be happy to put it over any date past that, the next hearing in downtown, so that it'll give you an opportunity to do what you want to do. This is illegal. This is illegal. This is literally like just mapping out a way to obstruct justice, to make sure the victims and survivors are not protected. This is literally written down in official court transcripts. So then the court says, okay, to Maurice, like, okay, do you waive your right to not be sentenced today and continue this to February, like a few months from now? Yeah, he says. So that's the end of the hearing, but I'm not done talking about this hearing. So we're all sitting there. It was like me, my brother, and several other people because we brought a bunch of people so that we would have eyes and witnesses to what was happening. Even though we didn't know what was happening, we knew something was happening. That makes sense? I don't know. Anyways, so after court, the court, he's like, okay, end of the hearing. And me and my group of people, we all step out into the hallway, like right outside the courtroom in the hallway. And we were sitting there just kind of like chatting, like, wait, what just happened? Why did he say this isn't going to go the normal way? Why is he allowing Blair Burke to telling her she should force Judge Mater to take the case into this courtroom so that they can wrap it up as quick as they can? Like, what? What does this mean? And as we're saying this, the doors to the courtroom open and the team of attorneys like Blair Burke and then Alberto Driz, her client, and then Alberto's nephew, Sean Driz, and their team, they all walk out. And as they walk past us, and I just want to remind everybody at this point, because he's on felony probation, we all have restraining orders against the Drizzes. So we're allowed to be in the same courtroom for hearings that are called and depositions, whatever, but they are never allowed to address us, call, text, speak to, anything, like a picture on Instagram, whatever. They're walking past us, and Blair Burke starts laughing at us, looking at us and laughing. And then Sean's walking right next to her, and he starts laughing at us. And as he's about 3 feet passing me, he goes, "Have a nice day." And just, they all start giggling and laughing and like, "Good one," and walk past. He violated his probation again while at a probation violation hearing that was illegal, to talk about a probation violation that they let him get away with by not arresting him for the illegal white powder, the pew pew, and the green plants. So obviously I reached out to the DA after this to let them know he violated probation by addressing us. And I'll tell you what happened in the next couple parts. Thank you everybody for your questions. By the way, we have Christina Schwarzenegger on the calendar for a deposition in a few weeks, May 28th. So on my last post I just did, please feel free to post any questions or information that would help, because I'm preparing for that to give it to my attorneys to ask her. So thank you so much, everybody. I love you so much. Thank you.